Good morning. Hello, and welcome to the 6th Annual Oregon Transportation Summit. I'm Jennifer Dill, Director of the Oregon Transportation Research and Education Consortium, OTREC. The summit is the region's premier transportation conference, bringing together the top researchers on our affiliated campuses with the practitioners who put that research to use. OTREC organizes the summit with support from the Portland chapter of the Women's Transportation Seminar, the Oregon chapter of the American Planning Association, and the Oregon section of the Institute for Transportation Engineers. I hope that you got a chance to look at some of our student research posters down on the second floor when you were getting your coffee and breakfast. We're very proud to support students in our research projects and through our transportation student groups on our campuses. This conference helps build on our mission to educate future transportation leaders and get the best research into practice. We open this summit at an interesting time for transportation in general and for transportation research here at Portland State University. This summit marks the last under the original federal grant that created OTREC. We're now embarking on an exciting transition as we redefine the Transportation Research and Education Center at Portland State and its programs, including this conference. Stay tuned for news in the near future, a new name, a new logo, a new website. We'll be announcing that in the coming weeks. Each year at the summit, during this morning plenary session, we present a theme of national interest and describe its implications on transportation at the national and state levels. Transportation Secretary Anthony Foxx has repeatedly cited safety, and particularly bicycle and pedestrian safety, as a top priority. As we in this room know, however, naming a priority isn't enough to solve a problem. Last week at the Pro Walk, Pro Bike, Pro Place conference in Pittsburgh, named the New Portland by some, Secretary Foxx took his stated support much further, announcing a comprehensive initiative to address transportation injuries and deaths. He offered this sobering statistic: injuries and fatalities of pedestrians and cyclists has steadily increased since 2009 at a rate much higher than motor vehicle fatalities. Key to the new initiative was the recognition that safety is a socioeconomic and infrastructure issue, not one that education, awareness, and technology will solve, although those are certainly part of the Secretary's initiative. He drew attention to the reality that in lower-income communities, those for whom the term gap doesn't begin to describe the lack of walking, biking, and transit infrastructure. In those communities, people walk, bike, and wait for transit along unsafe roads where they die at disproportionately high rates. Certainly, efforts to improve safety have long been a part of nearly every transportation agency's goals. But those goals have often reflected an unchallenged assumption: our roads are inherently unsafe places. Increasingly, transportation practitioners have called into question the acceptance of a certain mortality rate as the cost of getting around. The Swedish project Vision Zero, which places human health above mobility and other transportation objectives, has been adopted in other countries and cities. New York City, in announcing its commitment to this principle, declared that it would no longer regard traffic crashes as mere accidents, but rather as, quote, preventable incidents that can be systematically addressed. No level of fatality on city streets is inevitable or acceptable. And just last week, the City of New York was awarded a $25 million Tiger grant to implement that vision. At the state level, Minnesota took the lead, convening a Vision Zero workshop in 2001 and launching a statewide program called Toward Zero Deaths in 2003. Toward Zero Deaths is a multi-agency partnership that incorporates enforcement, engineering, health, and more. Other states have followed, and in 2009, the Towards Zero Deaths National Strategy on Highway Safety articulated a single national vision to unify the various agencies with a role in highway safety. We're pleased to have as our plenary speaker this morning a leader in Minnesota's pioneering effort. Sue Groth is the state traffic engineer and director of the Minnesota Department of Transportation's Office of Traffic Safety and Technology. Growth has helped the state change its thinking regarding traffic crashes and to shift its focus from simply reacting to high crash areas towards a systematic, anticipatory approach. In the first decade of Towards Zero Deaths, Minnesota saw a drop in traffic deaths of nearly 40%. Growth is a registered professional engineer and professional traffic operations engineer who has been with the MnDOT since 1982. Presenting the state and city response will be Troy Costalis and Leah Treat. Troy is the administrator of the Oregon Department of Transportation's Transportation Safety Division and the governor's highway safety representative since 1997. Under his leadership, Oregon has seen traffic fatalities and injuries drop to historically low levels, and individuals involved in crashes decline more than 30%. Leah Treat is the director of the Portland Bureau of Transportation, where she works to improve health through transportation. She served as managing deputy commissioner of the Chicago Department of Transportation and deputy director of the District of Columbia Department of Transportation. So, on your tables, you will find some index cards. If you think of a question to ask our presenters, please jot it down. When all three presenters have finished, I'll open it up for a question and answer session. Please now welcome me in welcoming Sue Growth.
Good morning. It is so great to be here, and I'm very excited to present today at your transportation conference. I had a very warm welcome last night, and thank you for those warm wishes from Jennifer. So today I want to share with you a little bit about what's happening at the national level, what's happening within the state of Minnesota and in many other states and cities and local jurisdictions across the country. My hope is that by the end of my presentation that you will become a believer in this new national vision. Toward Zero Deaths, or TZD as we call it, Vision Zero, or something very similar, is a phrase that has been used recently in many organizations. And many people have said to me, Sue, we've been working on traffic safety for decades, and we've done a great job and we've made great progress. What's so different about TZD, Towards Zero Death? Is it a new federal program? Is it a new initiative that came along with Safety Lou or MAP 21 that will be long gone with the next reauthorization? Is TZD a new buzzword, the actual name of the next breakout session? So my plan for the next 15 minutes is to introduce you to this concept and explain how it is different from past practices. TZD, the National Strategy on Highway Safety, is how the United States is going to take traffic safety to the next level. To make it a priority not just for AASHTO or engineering organizations, not just for GHSA and the behavioral organizations, but for all safety partners, but also for the general public, which is really going to be necessary to make a significant impact on reducing fatal and serious injury crashes across the country. Why develop a national strategy on highway safety? As Jennifer was stating, most DOTs have a strategic plan. Our state patrol in Minnesota has their own strategic plan. Our Department of Health has a strategic plan. Our Department of Public Safety has a strategic plan. Our university at the University of Minnesota has a strategic plan. And all of those strategic plans have a goal of providing a safe transportation system or to reduce deaths and injuries. So what we're trying to do with the new national strategy is to create is to tie these individual strategic plans or individual visions together under one umbrella, to create some synergy, to create some new partnerships, and new ways of addressing traffic safety. So the first question many of you may be asking is, why is zero deaths the vision? Isn't it impossible? Humans are involved, and there's no way that we as a nation can ever get to zero. I've heard these statements many times. Oops, I went the wrong way. Sorry here. So let's look at what's happening at the national level. I'm sorry for some of you so far in the back. There's plenty of seats up here, but I will try to explain this graph to you as I go through, okay? So this is a graph of highway fatalities and fatality rates in the United States since 1899, so over the past century. On the left axis is the numbers of fatalities nationally, going from 0 to its peak in 1972 of 54,500. Those were the days. This is the yellow or orange colored line there. Those were the days in 1972 where we all piled into the car. No one buckled up. If you were born by then, looking around the room, some of you might have not been born by then. On the right axis is fatality rate. And a fatality rate is the numbers of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Until the last few years, the numbers of vehicle miles traveled across the United States has continued to go up. So even though the raw numbers of fatalities, as you can see, remain quite high, in the 40, 50, 30,000 over the last decades here, the fatality rate has declined. So before Minnesota began its Towards Zero Death program, we used to use fatality rate as our measurement for how we were doing. It was pretty easy to convince ourselves that, hey, we're really doing a great job. As the number of vehicle miles traveled, you'd expect that fatalities would stay higher because our exposure is greater. There's more vehicles on the road. You're going to have more crashes. But the fatality rate is dropping, so that's a good thing. So we're doing a great job. Towards Zero Death changed that. We stopped talking about fatality rate in the state of Minnesota. We started talking about the numbers of people dying on our roadways. And it's harder to convince ourselves that we're doing such a great job when the raw numbers remain so high. This, I don't know, do we have any Minnesota Twins fans out there? They didn't do so well. One person in the back. This is our beautiful, brand new TCF Stadium, and or Target Stadium, and this stadium was opened in 2010, seats 39,000 fans. That's about the number of people that were dying on our highways nationally when we started our TZD program. How can we call that a success for our country? So I'm going to share with you a Minnesota video that we are not afraid to say that we stole this idea from Nevada. So that's one of the good things about coming to conferences like this and working with your peers is you can get good ideas. And so today I'm going to share with you an idea. This might be something that your state would be interested in. Maybe they already have. I don't know if they have created this video. We called it What's Your Goal? And it's a 3-minute video. And it was taken at the Minnesota State Fair in 2013. And it's amazing how similar Minnesotans answered the same questions as they did in Nevada.
How many people do you think are killed on Minnesota roads each year?
Thousands? Hundreds? I don't know. 200.
10,000?
Somewhere in the hundreds.
3,000.
Probably several hundred.
I think on 100.
350?
500.
200,000 maybe? Maybe a couple thousand.
Maybe 100.
300?
What is the leading cause of car crashes?
Texting and driving.
Probably texting, maybe drunk driving.
Probably texting or eating.
Texting and while you drive, drinking while you drive.
I would guess inattention.
I know distractions are a big deal, and alcohol, driving and drinking, or texting and driving.
Will we see a day when there are no fatalities on Minnesota roads?
Not really possible, I don't think, but hopefully.
It'd be nice. I would hope so.
Man, as much as I'd like to say yeah, I mean, it's pretty impossible to have zero.
Hopefully.
Pretty unlikely, I'd say.
No.
Unfortunately, no.
I wish there was, but I don't think so.
I don't think it's unreasonable. I think it's possible. I'd like to think so.
That would be the best dream ever.
I hope so. I hope so. So maybe next year, next month.
What would be a good goal?
50.
20? A couple hundred?
5,000 maybe.
If we could bring it down to less than 100, I'd be great.
5, maybe.
Probably a few hundred.
Around a good number, probably around 100 at least.
I think maybe around 30 or so.
I'd like to see it less than 10,000, somewhere around there. But I don't know how high the numbers are, so I don't know.
What would be a good goal for your family?
0.
0?
Actually, it would be just 0.
Yeah, 0, of course.
Well, of course, 0.
0.
0. 0.
0.
Oh, 0. We want 0 deaths.
Should the goal be 0 for everyone?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. If it's attainable, yes.
Yeah, I think it should be.
Well, of course.
Yes, the goal should be 0 for everyone.
Achieving a zero-death goal will take nothing less than a culture change in Minnesota, because TZD isn't about numbers. TZD is about saving lives. TZD is working.
Thank you. I can't take credit for that, but it really does hit home. When you ask that question, what's the goal for your family? How can any other answer be 0? It's got to be 0. So if it's 0 for your family, why can't it be 0, or why shouldn't it be 0 for everybody? So I put this slide up just to talk a little bit about why this is really going to take partnerships and commitment and public buy-in. When we look at the factors that contribute to crashes across the country, 93% of those are driven by behavior. 34 by roadways and 13 by vehicles, and then many overlapping here, many, multiple contributing factors. So we know that we're going to have to partner with the public and with our other disciplines, not just engineering, to be able to address this problem. So really, what is TZD? For Minnesota, and I think for the national strategy, TZD is about bringing stakeholders together. Jennifer mentioned that in Minnesota, we based our program on the Sweden model. We became early adopters back in 2003, and we developed an early strategic plan to start our program off. The original workshop that kind of kicked that plan off, there were 119 participants, a third of what was in this room. 90% of those people that were at that first workshop that created that plan have moved on and moved to other positions. But yet, we've been able to keep the TZD program in Minnesota alive and vibrant because we've got a program structure and we've got our locals involved, and we're continuing to educate people and to bring new stakeholders along with us. TZD is about using data to identify priorities and strategies. We need to recognize that many factors contribute to crashes. One of the challenges in our state, and I think it's probably similar in Oregon, at least in part of your states, is that 70% of the fatalities in Minnesota happen on rural roads. And we've got a lot of rural roads in Minnesota. But when you look at the data, they look somewhat scattered about. And so there's not one spot location that we can go and we can fix. And so what we started to do is thinking a little bit differently about safety and looking at types of crashes versus locations. And we figured that the types of crashes that are most significant are lane departure crashes and intersection type crashes. And then we started addressing those types of crashes on a systemic way over many, many miles of roads. We also recognized, if you look at our data, that about half of our fatalities happen off of the state system. So we get federal safety dollars to the state of Minnesota, and looking back in the days when we started many years ago, rather than having our Highway Safety Improvement Program, we had the HES program, the, God, now I can't even remember what it stood, what? Hazard elimination, that's the hazard elimination. So, you know, very, very different. That program and the way that that was looked at is you're going to go and you're going to find where you've got a lot of crashes and you're going to fix that one spot. Well, if you look at what was happening on our local roads, they carry fewer traffic volume, so we don't have those black spots. So we didn't, you know, it didn't make sense to share that money with the locals because there really wasn't a black spot for them to fix. There was no dead man's curve in the state. It's very random. But what we discovered is that if we're going to address this problem, we can't leave half of the problem out of the picture and not have access to any of the funding. So what we ended up doing is working with our partners. We started with our counties because our counties were, again, the roads that had the biggest problem. And we developed individual county safety plans for all of our 87 counties. A huge effort. It took us 3-4 years to go through that. But what we needed to do is we needed to work with our locals and help them to understand this new way of thinking about traffic crashes and not thinking about black spots. If we would have just said, here counties, here's half of the 87 or half of our HSIP money, go buy, you know, go ahead and go build your safety projects, they would have wanted, again, because of the old way of thinking, to put that all into adding a shoulder to one 10-mile stretch of road. And what we needed to do was we needed to help them understand that that is not the best use of safety funds. We need to pick projects that are going to maximize the benefit to our roads. And so we had to work with them, and through this safety planning process, we were able to educate them. And we didn't just do that alone with the engineers. We brought our partners, our behavior people along with us, and we brought in the 4 E's, and we got them to sit down and talk to each other. Some of these people at these counties hadn't ever even talked to each other about safety. And we brought them together to try to figure out how are we going to address this problem. It's not just an engineering problem. It has a lot to do with behavior, and there's things that we can do right now without any safety funding that can help improve safety in our communities. So we kind of called them to action through this planning process. And again, partnering with the 4 Ds, multidiscipline, public and private. We tried to bring public and private entities into the program, and then working with both the state and the local system. So the cornerstone, of course, is the 4 E's. That's what the national strategy talks about. Enforcement, engineering, and education. And when that fails, we've got our emergency medical and trauma services that step in to try to save a person's life. But then we build on that. We're including public health. We're including the courts, which has a huge impact on how laws are implemented and how people are going to be deterred or prosecuted if they're, you know, are repeat offenders for DWI. Employers play a huge role in, you know, how do they look at traffic safety for their employees? Do they have policies in place that are going to support this towards zero death vision? And then culture, and again, everything based on the data. So one of the things we also did, which I think is somewhat unique, is I talked a little bit about the safety plans, but we also, as a Department of Transportation, I think that most departments are broken into regions. So we have 8 regions in the Department of Transportation. On the left side of the map is our regions. And so we knew that we needed to bring this to the grassroots, because I work in St. Paul, and believe me, the people in Northwest Minnesota don't really care what I have to say. They really don't. And so we needed someone who was respected at the local level to be able to bring this message to that community. And so in our state, the district, we call them district engineers, or you might have regional engineers. The head engineer from the State Department who lives in that region co-chairs this region with the Minnesota State Patrol captain. And they actually have a coalition or a regional meeting that sits down and says, what are we going to do as a region? How do we get our locals involved? How do we engage our counties? And so it's led by these, what I consider prominent people from the local areas. We've developed safe road coalitions. The green are ones that are funded, and the yellow are ones that are unfunded. And these coalitions, again, work within the regions to help with law enforcement waves, get the media involved, get articles written in the paper, keep that, safety message in the eyes of the public and the citizens, and then trying to take a message that resonates with that local community. If a traffic crash happens that's horrible in one of these communities, this local coalition is there to bring light to what can be done. You know, was that person buckled up? You know, what's going on, those types of things. Some of the other strategies that we've implemented through our regions include, and I'm sure these are all things that are done here in the state of Oregon too. We've got high visibility enforcement campaigns. Again, this is not about catching people. This is about deterring people. We put these DWI arrest zones up at the beginning, and we've got cops all along the way. They still get drunk drivers. I mean, how could you, I mean, you're telling people they're going to be enforcing right here, and they still, you know, are very effective in getting people off of the road. But again, the publicity, trying to deter people and getting people to find a sober ride home. We've had new policies at our state that we adopted in 2011 that requires that all of our construction projects and preservation projects include rumble strips and safety edge treatments. Again, our biggest crash problem is lane departure crashes. These types of policies, once initiatives, once they get implemented, they'll stop people from running off the road, or if they do leave the road, the safety edge, which we can talk about, helps people so they don't overcorrect. Or if they overcorrect, they don't, you know, lose control and end up flipping. We've developed safe cab programs through our local TZD coalitions at the local level. We've also incorporated some we've worked with law enforcement, public health, and emergency services to teach parent-teen classes. Again, teen drivers, another critical emphasis area where actually this got passed this last legislative session. A legislator who was part of one of our conferences and workshops said, what else can I do? She introduced legislation to make a parent component a requirement in our driver's education courses, because it's been shown that if you can get parents involved and educated in that conversation during those early months of a teen driver, it's very effective. So that's a requirement, but it's not a total requirement, because if a parent chooses not to, then they just have to show that the teen driver has more behind the wheel experience with their teen drivers. So in other words, through this partnership and getting our legislators involved and activated in our TZD regions, we actually have advocates saying, what legislation do you want me to introduce to help this year? So pretty cool. And then one of the other things that we've been doing that's also kind of been a proven countermeasure is that these coalitions, 4E coalitions or TZD Safe Road coalitions, also review in Greater Minnesota. This doesn't happen for every crash in our metro area, but in Greater Minnesota, they review all of the deaths that happen in their county. And it's a multidisciplinary approach. You bring the people that responded to the crash in, you talk to the people that responded, and you look at, you know, from an engineering standpoint, from a response standpoint, behavior standpoint, what were things that could have been done differently, and then use that data to figure out what can we do. Could we have done something different to make an improvement? Out of one of these fatal reviews, it became apparent that one of the locals in our southern state needed the jaws of life to be able to extract someone from this horrific crash. They didn't have the jaws of life. The person, I believe, ended up passing on the scene. And so it was like, through this, they said, well, we don't have the jaws of life, but the county next door has the jaws of life. Can we set up some sort of a reciprocity agreement so that we can get that jaws of life to our scene in the next county? So through this, they discovered we got to get these reciprocity agreements set up. We have to set up some new dispatching protocol. And again, this was a way to move forward. So 10 years, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who takes credit. And there's a lot of egos in Minnesota. I don't know, is there egos here? We do a lot of work with law enforcement. We do, and a lot of work between agencies. We've got our Department of Health. We've got our Department of Public Safety. We've got our DOT, and we all have been doing great things in our own silos, but working together and really not caring who takes credit, you can receive, or you can really move forward. So the results in Minnesota, I think Jennifer mentioned, we've had some great successes. We started our program in 2003, and we have had interim goals, even though our vision is 0. We had interim goals along the way, and each time we made an interim goal, then we set another one 5 years out or 3 years out, depending. Our new goal for 2030 is fewer than 300 fatalities, 200 for 2020 is fewer than 300 fatalities by 2020. So this year we're down a little bit. We had a little bit of an upswing in 2012, but we're continuing to work together. And I'm really excited about the national strategy, which is taking this program and again trying to make it the umbrella program where multiple jurisdictions and multiple organizations can adopt it as a strategic vision to help them move forward. So. Successes, commitment to a culture change, collaboration, and using data to promote best practices, and of course, innovation. So I look forward to talking with some of you maybe afterwards and answering some not tough questions up here, and also then getting a little bit more detail at the breakout session. So thank you very much.
Good morning. Let's see. Well, as we get started this morning on the Oregon response to the National Towards Zero Deaths Initiative, I thought I'd share with you a quick story. I had a chance to be at a workshop down in San Diego, and that particular day, you could help out? All right, good, okay. We'll pick this up. How's that? How long are you going to be? There you go. No? Okay, here we go. Cool. And at that particular workshop, I had a chance, we flew in, so I had the airplane, and I took a taxi into where the workshop was, so it was a passenger in a motor vehicle. This happened to be in San Diego, California. And on the way in towards the hotel, I noticed there were quite a few people that were jogging and walking, riding a bike. I thought I need to complete my transportation experience while I'm here in San Diego, and some point in time while I'm here, I need to get out and walk or run as the area around the hotel. So I was asking the hotel staff about the potential to do that, and that wasn't necessarily real confident in myself that I was going to be able to partake in the walking and running bit successfully. Just like the people around. It was just a little daunting seeing these folks around this hotel. And so I decided the third or fourth day in, we had a little bit of a break in the way the workshop was running, and so I headed downstairs and checked in with the front desk and the concierge, and Said, I'm going to head outside. I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to do something a little different than I normally do at home. Get out there, and I'm going to run, see how far I can go. I got outside the front door of the hotel, and Bell staff were there. I started to do a little bit of stretching, and they were giving me some encouragement to head out and have fun, out trying to jog around the building there. And so I took off. Got to about the edge of the driveway. And I'm already starting to break into a pretty good sweat. It was warm. I wasn't necessarily dressed appropriately for this particular exercise. And there had to be a rail line real close to the hotel, so I had started to head that way, and one of the commuter rails came by, so I waited, and I thought, well, I've seen people do this before. I'll just stand here and jog by the edge of the rail line as it goes by. It was a long train. And so the train finally went by, and I took off and just followed this road and realized that whether it was subconscious or not, but I was actually heading back to the hotel pretty quickly. Got towards the front desk, and I had to stop. I just could not continue running all the way to the front door of the hotel. I was wiped out already, just sweating profusely. I started walking towards the front of the hotel, and the Bell staff said, "Oh, here, sir, and they came running out with a towel. Apparently didn't want to wipe up the driveway. Having the towel, and I walked in, and the front desk staff came out and handed me a couple bottles of water. I promptly put them on the back of my neck, and thought, well, at least I think I can crawl my way back to the elevator and head back to my hotel room. Got into the elevator, pushed the button, and there was a lady in the elevator, and just dressed to the nines, very, very, very gorgeous outfit, and she looks at me and just raises her head up and says, somebody's deodorant is not working this morning. So I took the bottle of water off my head, and I looked up at her, and I said, well, must be yours, because I'm not wearing any. So, towards zero deaths in the state of Oregon. We've actually been at this for quite a while. Our first state strategic highway safety plan was published in 1995. And we had our version 2 in 2004, and we then had our version 3 in 2011. And what's interesting about MAP 21, the federal transportation package that Congress passed a couple years ago, in the safety world, the strategic safety plan is the only one identified in that language that actually now has an expiration date. Every state must first have a strategic highway safety plan. And now number 2, every state must renew and refurbish and retool that plan on a 5-year cycle. And so with our last plan, version 3, being published in 2011, state of Oregon will have our version 4, done by 2016. And the Oregon Transportation Safety Committee, a 5-member governor-appointed committee that's in charge of highway safety for us, has already launched and started that process towards version 4 of Oregon's Safety Action Plan. And what's rather interesting is when you look back over history, very similar graph to what Sue had shown for Minnesota, you look back over at both fatalities, which are in the pale color, and the fatality rate in the dark color. We've made significant progress from the moment in time that we started looking at this from a strategy and coordinated point of view. In fact, a couple years ago, Oregon, for the first time that we know of since we started recording the data in the 1930s, a couple years ago, Oregon experienced a 0 fatality Christmas holiday and a 0 fatality New Year's holiday in the same year, which is a phenomenal thing because we typically average between 4 and 7 fatals in each of those holidays, and we had back-to-back 0 just a couple years ago. Our view of towards zero deaths in Oregon, we don't use that moniker. You won't see that phrase or that particular icon. But ever since 1995, with the first publication of our strategic plan, we've been talking about getting to a day where there are 0 fatals, 0 disabling injuries on our transportation system, no matter what type of transportation you use. Our goal is a little different. Our goal is to increase the number of 0 fatality days. How many fatal-free days does Oregon experience? Let's turn this conversation of talking positively about a negative situation, let's start talking positively about a positive situation. And our goal in the state of Oregon is to try and achieve 175 fatality-free days in 1 year. And we've come close. Last year we were at 170. That means 170 times in a 24-hour period in this state we had 0 transportation fatalities. Thank you very much for making that happen. And we're well on our way to achieving that again. Last year was our lowest fatality count across the state since 1944. And as of Friday, we are 6% ahead of where we were last year. And so we are making a huge difference. So these plans have come into place. Those were big plans, big efforts, big challenges. But there's been some great things that we've been able to achieve in this state. How many motorcyclists in the room? There you go. Oregon, for the past 10 years consecutively, 100% helmet use. When we've done surveys around the entire state, 100% use of helmets by motorcyclists in this state. The law we have in place was actually voted in by the people, and it was passed in all 36 counties for helmet use in this state. In the area of impaired driving, just a decade ago, Oregon was right in the middle of the pack. We were ranked 21st in relationship to the number of alcohol-related fatalities based on the vehicle miles traveled in our state. Through 2012, we've dropped from the 21st in the country. We've dropped down to the 7th best in the country related to alcohol-related fatalities, which is also a major improvement given how rural the state is. Most of those states that are in the top 10 are urban states. Safety belts, how many people wear your belts when you're in the vehicle? Our survey is better than your hand raising, by the way. Last year, Oregon was ranked #1 in the country for seatbelt use rate at 98.2%. That is the highest rate any state has ever published in the survey across the country. And we've already gotten our 2014 survey, and we maintained that high rate at 97.8. So thank you very much for wearing your belts and making sure that when there are kids in the car that they're wearing their belts as well. We've also been fortunate, Doug Bish back there raised his hand from the ODOT Highway Division related to infrastructure safety. We have dedicated money, just as Sue talked about, related to highway safety improvements. And one of the things that we've also done is looked at using those monies for roads outside of just those that ODOT controlled, all roads transportation safety effort that Doug is leading. The idea here is it doesn't matter what road the individual's on or which road the incident occurred on. The people involved, the family involved, don't care. It's up to each one of us, whoever's responsible for these particular roads, whether it be the public safety side, the road maintenance side, the building side of the road. We've got to do our part from the professional point of view because those people that are on those systems are counting on us, whether they're walking, scooting, skating, biking, cycling, passenger or a driver. They're counting on us to do our job as best as we can. We've been fortunate in the state of Oregon to have support of our governors for the past 20 years, our legislature, the head of the Transportation Commission, the director of ODOT, all have been very, very supportive of moving forward with safety and making it a priority for the state of Oregon. But there are still things that we have to do. We have the lowest per capita rate of law enforcement of any state west of the Mississippi. So when you do see an officer, shake their hand and tell them thank you, because they're doing double duty compared to what most of the rest of the country experiences as far as law enforcement being available. In the area of impaired driving, while we have dropped to being the 7th lowest rate in the country, we have some pending issues coming our way that we have to think about how this is going to work. We have medical marijuana within the state. We also have a pending ballot measure in November related to recreational use of marijuana. Colorado and Washington State both have legalized recreational marijuana, and in their highway safety portfolio, that has presented them some challenges. So how does Oregon get in front of that particular initiative in order to be prepared if the same thing was to happen within the state of Oregon? Moving from reactive to proactive. Very important, and sometimes it's difficult for people to understand as to why are you not fixing this? This is the 3rd crash here, someone's died here, why are you not doing this effort? Instead, you're working on this corner where there's no incident has ever occurred. The systemic effort compared to the reactive effort is important to make sure that it's part of the picture, because we'd like to get a situation where it doesn't take someone to die or be seriously injured before there's some sort of effort put in place. Also an issue that we need to work on is around the rules of engagement. The key of the transportation system is to try and keep people from being in the same place at the same time. Knowing what your responsibility is, what your part is, and following that is key to making that happen. In our infrastructure system, sidewalks, bike lanes, rail lines, the highways and roads, if we can make those things become self-educating and self-enforcing, we don't have to have EMS and law enforcement to try and guide us on what to do or to come up pick up the pieces afterwards. The road system itself is helping us understand what we need to do. And the very last bullet on this slide talks about hold the ground that we already have taken. Sometimes it is best to play goalie. Just not let the cruddy stuff pass. And that's a lot of effort, and that's a lot of work. There are times when you take advantage and you step up and you become the forward and you try to score, but there are a lot of times when you're at the spot where you're making a difference and you're helping people get home safely day in and day out. Playing goalie is one of the best things that we might be able to do. In the state of Oregon, it's all up to all of us. The collaborative nature for what we do, whether that's being done from our professional point of view, from the seat that we sit, and the ability to lead and make a difference as that professional. But then I challenge you, how do you act when you go outside that door at the end of the day? What's your personal approach? Are you following what you are asking others to lead? Are you a leader outside of the office as well? Proud to be Oregon's highway safety leader, proud of the record that we've been able to put forward. I'm looking forward to continuing to increase the number of fatal-free days within the state of Oregon because Towards Zero Deaths is that vision that we've adopted for almost 20 years. And we can make a difference day in and day out, and you prove that day in and day out. So thank you very much, and look forward to the questions and the follow-up.
Good morning, everyone. I'm having technical difficulties too. Sorry. Oh, well, now you guys have to see the whole thing. How do I get it going to the... There we go. Thank you. Thank you so much. So it's quite an honor for me to be on this panel this morning with some very, very distinguished practitioners. I get really passionate when I talk about safety, so it was really exciting for me when this invitation came in to speak to you all today. Where's the clicker? Is the clicker easier? So Vision Zero and safety is a very personal issue to me. I am the mom of 4 children, ages 5 through 9, and I have lost a lot of close friends and loved ones in tragic crashes, auto, pedestrian, and bike. There is no getting back my best friend from high school who died in our junior year while driving too fast on a windy mountain road. And there's no getting back my dear friend in college who was killed training for an iron horse competition in New Mexico. These are some recent headlines during my first year here as the transportation director. And these are the headlines that keep me up at night. These are the headlines that I don't want to be reading in the newspaper anymore. We lost 36 people on our roads last year. And those were 36 people who had mothers and fathers. Those are 36 people who had brothers and sisters. Many of them had children, and they all had loved ones. And I would venture to guess that everyone in this room has been affected by a traffic injury or fatality in some way or another throughout your life. And this issue is personal to you as well. What's even more striking about our numbers in Portland last year, the 36 fatalities we had on our road, is it was more than double the number of homicides the city experienced. Despite the horrific numbers that we had in Portland, Vision Zero to me is about addressing more than just the fatalities and crashes. Sorry. I don't know why the computer maybe wants me to go. Maybe if I stand away from it. Over here. So Vision Zero to me is about creating a very prosperous city. It's going to be a city that allows Portlanders to lead an active, healthy life and develop healthy habits early in life that will lead to safe behavior later on. Vision Zero is about health for all ages and all abilities. It's also about prosperity. It's about keeping money in our local economy. It's keeping people staying in Portland and attracting companies for middle-income jobs that keeps our economy humming. And Vision Zero is inclusive of all Portlanders. God, this is an epic fail on me for the PowerPoint. Sorry. Anyway, so it's about providing low-cost transportation choices that reduce household burden of income on sole reliance on an automobile. I'm going to try the buttons now to see if this works better. Is this the next one? All right, so Vision Zero is a key element in our strategy to keep Portland functioning smoothly, and it allows people and goods to reliably move from one part of our beautiful city to another. But if we do not create safer conditions so that people can bicycle, walk, and access transit, and if we just stay right where we are today with our 6% bicycle, 15% walking, and 8% transit mode splits, by 2035, we're going to need 18 more Powell Boulevards just to tread water where we are today with congestion. But if we pick up the pace and we grow our active transportation and transit modes, we'll reduce traffic volumes from where they are today, such that we would need 5 fewer Powell Boulevards and create a safer environment. So like Minnesota and the state of Oregon, we have been working on traffic safety for some time now, and with some promising results. One of my favorite programs, one of the best parts of my job, is Safe Routes to School. Protecting our future, educating and inspiring our children about safety and alternative modes of transportation is critical to our city's resiliency, and it's a really important toolkit for Vision Zero. I am really proud to say that our Safe Routes to School program is the best in the nation. We are in 80 elementary schools, and this year we're going to be expanding our program to middle schools. Each year, second graders at 40 schools across the city learn how to safely cross the street, and fifth graders learn how to safely navigate their neighborhood on a bike. Research has shown us that the more physically active school kids are, the better they perform academically. It also shows that they're much more likely to be active later in life. So we're out in the school inspiring our children to be active, to walk, to bike, to scoot, and take different modes of transportation. We therefore have a commensurate responsibility to provide them safe passage to their schools. And we are delivering all those projects, not at the pace that I would like, but we are. Last Friday, I had the pleasure of walking home from Sitton Elementary in St. John's neighborhood on a newly constructed path through Pier Park. This project was completed in a partnership with the Parks Bureau, and it serves hundreds of diverse families. Previously, families had to walk through dirt and mud and go out of their way to Northeast Columbia Boulevard, which is a very busy, high-speed freight route to access the school or to get to transit or even to go shopping. As I mentioned, this is going to be our first year with Safe Routes in middle schools, and we're going to be introducing our Smart Trips program, and we're going to be educating children and their families and providing them resources on how to walk, bike, skateboard, scoot, transit, or even carpool to school. And we're also going to be reviewing school traffic operations at middle schools and making safety recommendations where they are needed. Another important part of our Vision Zero program, but not as much fun to talk about, is our High Crash Corridors program, and it focuses on streets with a high concentration of crashes. We have very limited resources for this program. We have $250,000 annually for the entire city of Portland. So we take our limited pool of funds and we focus on education, engineering, and enforcement. Metro, in their State of Safety report that was published in 2012, identified high-speed, multi-lane roadways as being the places where pedestrians are most likely to be injured or killed. They recommend safety strategies that match the solutions to the crash pattern and street and neighborhood context, rather than an approach of simply bringing roadways up to adopted standards as the solution. 3 years ago, we installed our first rapid flashing beacon, and this is a technology that is proven to greatly improve pedestrian crossings. Research shows that cars are 5 times more likely to stop for a pedestrian in a crosswalk with a flashing beacon than one without. Today, we have 20 beacons that are operational, and we have secured funds to install an additional 16 in the city to create safer crossings of multi-lane arterials. This photo shows a marked crosswalk on Northeast Gleason, a 4-lane, 35-mile-an-hour roadway. And on January 29, 2013, 28-year-old Heather Fitzsimmons was killed in this crosswalk while walking home from Vestal Elementary School. The pedestrian crossing in this photo does not meet our current best practices for safety. You'll see there's no pedestrian refuge island, there's no active warning device, it doesn't even meet ADA requirements. PBOT and the community recognized this and went to work. This is what Northeast Gleason and 78th looks like today. You see proven tools for pedestrian safety fully implemented, an improved crossing with rapid flash beacons, the pedestrian refuge island, and a 3-lane cross-section with a center turn lane. We expect this crossing improvement to reduce pedestrian crashes here by 46%, and the project as a whole to reduce all types of crashes by 29%. Another recent safety project we completed is on Southeast Division, one of our high crash corridors. Following over a year of public outreach and community input, we restriped Southeast Division Street between 60th and 80th Avenues from 2 11-foot travel lanes in each direction to 1 11-foot travel lane in each direction with a center turn lane and bike lanes. And this fall, we're going to begin construction on 3 pedestrian islands with marked crosswalks at 68th and then islands at 64th and 79th following. This road reconfiguration is expected to reduce the number of pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers injured or killed on Southeast Division Street between 60th and 80th by 30%. The project has already achieved a 56% reduction in speeding and has brought the operating speed of the roadway down to the posted speed of 35 miles an hour. The amount of traffic measured on Southeast Division has remained steady, and there's been no diversion onto local roadways. We need to build more projects like these, so I'm really happy to share with you today that we are going to be breaking ground on a similar project on East Burnside from 14th to 32nd in October. This project is going to reorganize East Burnside by eliminating a travel lane, creating a center turn lane, and make the burgeoning business district easier to access on foot and safer to travel through. In 2016, the most significant of our road reorganization projects will take place when Foster Road changes to a 3-lane street. Actually, make that 5. We're putting in bike lanes when it gets restriped. We are also very committed to operating our streets at speeds that are safe. Speed limits, as our 2 speakers before me mentioned, are one of the factors that contribute to an inordinate burden, an inordinate amount of our serious injuries and fatalities, and more of ours are happening in East Portland. And in East Portland, our roadways are often posted at 10 to 15 miles an hour faster than in our inner neighborhoods. So we are proposing a new methodology for setting speeds on our city streets and ones that will address these inequities. With more high-speed arterials than any other part of our city, East Portland reflects that by having more pedestrian deaths each year than anywhere else in our city. Our proposal is that we should set the speeds of our streets based not on how fast people are currently traveling, but on speeds that are safe for the people who live and work in those neighborhoods. Thank you. and we look forward to a very healthy discussion with ODOT on this. We continue to be proud of our neighborhood greenway speed limits. The mantra that 20 is plenty is being backed up by evidence. We have implemented more than 60 miles of 20-mile-an-hour streets so far. The new 20-mile-an-hour zones were just established on the 50s route, and our neighborhood greenway program is ramping up to build a system in East Portland and throughout the city that provides a basic level of service for all Portlanders. We're also focused on strengthening our partnership with Portland Police Bureau, and they are a critical partner in our efforts to ensure our transportation system is safe. Our staff is meeting with them monthly with the Traffic Safety Division to move forward on our shared goal of safer streets, and we analyze traffic data and are addressing our challenges head on. But despite the progress that I'm sharing with you and what I'm talking about today, I'd also like to suggest to you today that Portlanders need to place a higher priority on safety. First of all, while traffic crashes are a tremendous destroyer of lives, they are such a commonplace occurrence that I feel we are starting to have a culture of acceptance. We need to change the conversation to make safety personal and to make it matter to everyone. We need to talk about the costs of these traffic fatalities, the costs borne by our economy, and the costs borne by our most vulnerable populations. The cost of traffic crashes and the resulting property damage and human injury and death they bring about is estimated to represent 1 to 3% of our gross domestic product. The CDC puts the cost of lost work and medical costs due to traffic fatalities at $422 million a year in the state of Oregon. The National Safety Council pegs the cost of traffic fatalities and injuries to be $150 million in the city of Portland alone. And as Governing Magazine recently highlighted, the traffic deaths in Portland followed some disturbing national trends. In Multnomah County, the pedestrian death rate is 2.3 times higher in high-poverty neighborhoods. This pattern was mirrored in Portland. In 2013, 11 of our 36 traffic fatalities were pedestrians, and most were killed while traversing East Portland streets. We have a strong track record, and we have made progress. But that being said, to date this year, we have 17 traffic fatalities in Portland. That's why the Transportation Bureau has adopted the philosophy of Vision Zero. And that is why Vision Zero must be made real and relevant to everyone in Portland. We need to get back to the 90s, where we saw a precipitous decline in traffic fatalities. And while I'm proud of what we've accomplished in the year I've held this position, it's clear we're currently not doing enough. We need to plan for a safer system and take aggressive actions. We need to foster a culture change where people understand and expect safety to be our top transportation priority, above access, above level of service, above everything. It's not going to be easy. Portland has a very complex multimodal system that creates really difficult engineering challenges. This is why we need all of you to invest your energy in helping us push the ball down the field. The people in this room can help us build the support for the culture change that we need to end the culture of acceptance of traffic deaths. Think of the hundreds of lives we would save in a decade. Think of what the state of Oregon could do with an additional $422 million plowed into its economy. Think of how we could level a playing field so that household income would no longer be a predictor of how safe you are traveling on our streets. I have made safety a top priority for the Bureau, but we need to integrate it more thoroughly into our work, into the city, and into our public consciousness. And in the short term, again, we need your support and partnership on our first 3 key priorities: separation, speed, and partnerships. Our vision requires that we more clearly spell out a street's purpose and design it accordingly. We need to make improvements to our freight routes to ensure that our businesses have predictable access and travel times, and work to ensure that is where freight is traveling. We have to improve our pedestrian crossings, our access to transit, and ensure Portlanders have the infrastructure and information to safely navigate on foot. We must provide alternative, family-friendly routes to our business corridors, and we need to provide separated routes for cyclists and pedestrians. Protected bike lanes and sidewalks are essential tools we need. These efforts are going to reduce conflicts and crashes. On a regional scale, the Tillicum Crossing is nearing completion, the first bridge of its kind with bus, streetcar, light rail, people on foot and bike, and no personal vehicles. This is a powerful symbol where we're headed as a region, and I cannot wait to see this bridge open. Already open and ready for you to ride on is our new cycle track on Southwest Multnomah, and we're breaking ground on a new neighborhood greenway this season on Sacramento between 77th and Southeast 19th. Projects like these are going to make walking, biking, and transit use more appealing to more Portlanders and more safe, so we need to do more of these projects. Just as we must lower speeds across our system, we also need the help to enforce them. I was pleased to be out with the Portland Police on September 5th at Vernon Elementary School in Northeast Portland as part of a crosswalk enforcement. And it was an action designated to educate the traveling public more than a gotcha gimmick. Police, though, still, even though we had warning signs, just like Sue talked about, blocks in advance saying pedestrian enforcement action up ahead and orange flags and cones everywhere, the police still issued 18 warnings and citation in less than a 2-hour period. So we need new tools to control speeds. Did that go right? Our vision requires Portland to have the authority to implement fixed photo radar. Fixed photo radar is a safety tool implemented with great effect throughout the country, including Chicago and DC, where I worked previously. And I can attest to its effectiveness. In its first year of implementation in Chicago, there was a 60% decline in speeding around schools and parks. And in Washington, D.C., they have 87 cameras, and since the program's implementation, crashes have been reduced by 20% overall. Fixed speed cameras can alleviate speeds on our high crash corridors, and they will free up our partners in the traffic division to provide traffic enforcement on other priority locations across the city. As such, I've made gaining this legislative authority a top priority for the upcoming session, and I ask for your support in this effort. But it will take partnerships. Our vision requires community support, public buy-in, and new partners. And I've heard from a lot of people in Portland that are asking me why I'm so focused on safety when we need to focus so much attention on paving and maintenance. And I agree that maintaining our assets is a critical priority for the Bureau, and it's one that I have been working on tirelessly since I've gotten here, but I refuse to ignore safety. Our vision requires that all Portlanders understand the stake that they have in a safe transportation system and the value that our safety work is going to bring to them. September 2nd, I had the honor of celebrating 5 new rapid flash beacons in East Portland that our staff worked tirelessly to get online before the school year started. Thanks to the support of State Representatives Jessica Vega-Peterson and Shamia Fagan, the Transportation Bureau received state funds to install these 5 crossing improvements and pay for an additional 12. Also in East Portland, and we're going to install the rest in the coming year. These are needed projects that came from critical partnerships at the region and at the state level to implement. While our low-cost, high-return safety projects have tremendous value, we don't have the funding to do them at the pace our vision requires. And we do lack the funding to do more aggressive and expensive fixes that will truly transform our high-crash corridors into thriving, livable communities. Our vision requires sustainable funding, and I ask for your support on the Our Streets effort. As you can see with this map, if given the opportunity to utilize new transportation funding, we'll be spending it in the smartest, most equitable way, targeting the funds in a data-driven manner to the roadways and the communities that most need them. This is our vision for the future. I want this to be your vision for our future together. It's a vision that's going to require your help, your ideas, your research, and your political support. And it's going to require your expertise and resources, and we need help at the federal level and at the state level and regionally. We'll need to look at efforts across the country and the world to see what is working and what we can replicate here. And this vision will drastically change the nature of our streets. So just as we must rethink our transportation system for the 200,000 new residents who are predicted to move to Portland over the next 10 years, or whether it's for climate change, we must also rethink our system for safety. I thank you all for your time today, and I very much appreciate your support in this effort.
All right, we're going to open it up to questions. There are 2 microphones, one on each side here. And then if you can't make it to a microphone, raise your hand and someone will come and find you. As you're making your way up there, I'm going to kick it off with one question, which is, does the word zero in these initiatives open you up to the inevitable criticism that no matter how much progress you make, you're still tolerating a number of deaths? Anyone want
to? I just go back to the video and just the thought that when you bring it home to your family, your vision for your family is zero, and therefore zero really is the only long-term vision. And we can all agree that that's the direction that we need to go.
I would echo Sue's comments that, if you asked anybody in this room how many deaths are acceptable to you, the answer is going to be 0. And Vision Zero is a guiding philosophy, and so it's something that you have to incorporate into your culture and in the way you approach your projects and your work. And I don't believe it's setting us up for failure if we don't get to 0 in the set amount of time. But if we don't embrace the philosophy and start the culture change, change won't happen.
Well, I appreciate the criticism, because to me that means somebody's thinking about it. Whereas before it may not have been in their conscience to think about what it means to be on the transportation network and what, unfortunately, we experience all too often with death or serious injury. I like to take the negative situation and try and turn around a positive, and that's mentioned earlier in the presentation, talking about how many fatal-free days we experience in a community, in a region, or in the state, because that is absolutely achievable, and we've shown we can do it on major holidays as well as at major stretches during the year.
Okay. I'm going to start over here, and we're going to alternate between the 2 mics.
Hi, Rob Sadowski from the Bicycle Transportation Alliance. We're committed to Vision Zero and a part of a 6-city collaborative, and really excited to hear Portland step up. I'm going to ask you a case study. This is for Leah and Troy. Using Barber Boulevard as a case study, how would a Vision Zero approach guide design and decisions for both PBOT and ODOT?
Thanks, Rob. That particular area is outside my expertise as far as on the engineering point of view, but a couple principal pieces that I would share. Any stretch of road, Barber Boulevard or others, how have those that are responsible for the infrastructure, the education, the outline of what's expected, how have we conveyed the message to the users of that particular stretch, whether it be a bike lane, bike path, roadway? Our job is to try and administer that in a way that people know what's going on, to keep them safe. They're relying on us to put those things in place so that everybody knows what's going on, what their role is, so that we don't have people being in the same place at the same time. Unfortunately, as been presented in all 3 cases, some of the funding to be able to do some of these things becomes a bit difficult. And bringing the groups together is an important piece that doesn't necessarily take a lot of funding in order to get people to talk about what the situation is and what the potential solutions are. Because people that are in that area are the ones that are going to know best about what's going on versus somebody sitting quite a few miles away. So holding that local conversation is a potential way to at least start the ball rolling about what are the needs that are there and what can we do with the resources that we have, be it time or money.
So I am really happy to say that we have a strong partnership with ODOT on this project. Our traffic engineers got together prior to the construction on the bridges to set up data collection points. And ODOT is currently collecting data about traffic volumes on Barber and in the surrounding neighborhoods for diversion. So we're looking forward to the wrap-up of that data data collection in the next couple of weeks. We're going to sit down and analyze it together, and hopefully, if it shows that taking it down to the single lane already hasn't had an impact on throughput or local diversion, there will be a case to be made to put in separated facilities. We do have a lot of cyclists on that road, and they do not have a safe facility to ride on. So if the data doesn't show that, we'll have to address that issue head on and figure out how to make a safe space for cyclists to get through that neighborhood and into downtown, because we want to support them as well.
Good morning, Bob Stacy, Metro Councilor. Thanks to all the panelists for great presentations and for emphasizing the kinds of standards and criteria that are necessary for developing a safe transportation environment. Thanks particularly to Director Leah Treat for doing a great job of advocating for more investment in these programs. I'm going to offer the suggestion that until we do a better job of investing at the state level, at the regional level, at the city level, as we put the budgets together, we can't achieve the vision because we're spending on expansion and speed at least as much and usually much more than on safety. As one hometown example, I'm really pleased that Leah put forward the slide showing some of the improvements being made in crossing programs in East Portland. And Metro did have a small role in that. The region allocated a quarter of a boost that we realized in federal funding from MAP 21 implementation last round and put it into that East Portland program at the encouragement of TriMet and Portland. Yet at the same time, the other 3/4 went to 3 major suburban arterial roadway expansions to serve industrial site interchanges on our freeway network. Those were federal flexible funds, not bound by our Highway Trust Fund to be spent on roadway expansion or other road and bridge projects, free to be spent on pedestrian, bicycle, and transit programs. We didn't have an overarching principle built into our regional plan, our state funding strategy, or local plans to deliver those flexible funds to projects for safety for vulnerable pedestrians, transit users, cyclists. What can we do to develop standards for the funding program that will deliver the resources necessary to reach Vision Zero?
I'm staying away from that one.
Well, possibly one small piece, and thanks for the conversation, also for the investment that Metro's made. Right now, within the state of Oregon, Clackamas County is the only local community that has stepped forward with their own strategic highway safety plan. Portland is at the doorstep. Washington County is at the doorstep. Lane County is at the doorstep. And to me, that is one of those things that brings in that overarching conversation. There are plans for a lot of other things, but there is no plan within the local community here related to safety. And so coming forward with what's our performance as a community, what's our expectation, what's our goal, what are some of the overarching things that we do agree on in a formalized and adopted local strategic plan will pay off. It may not be the day after it's adopted, but it will start to pay off because people will have something to rely on, something that is a common language and a common described effort that needs to go forward. Right now, it's a bunch of pieces of the orchestra, but it's not being all led at the same time. And the music isn't as sweet as it could be, because each player is taking its own time and doing their own lead the way they want to.
The only thing that I would add to that is I really enjoyed listening to Sue talk about how Minnesota is addressing this at the umbrella approach between from the state to the county to the city, and really coming together as a group to look at a holistic approach for safety. And I hope that we get there in Oregon very soon.
And I think we have some of the same issues. I was kind of joking before. I mean, there's the funding is an issue. I mean, funding is an issue for all the states, and we're just limping along without even having the new authorization. We don't know where we're going with the federal funds, all that type of stuff. So it's important to have the plans, I think, like that Troy talked about. But in addition, we do need to recognize, even though, that some of those projects that maybe aren't using safety dollars do have a safety benefit. So, whatever intersections or interchanges that are being introduced do have a safety component to them too. So I don't think we can just separate this and say that a capacity improvement is not a safety improvement. That I think it's both, and so we just need to remember that too.
Okay, we are running a little short on time, so I'm going to add, and there's a lot of people who want to ask questions, so try to be efficient in your question.
Chris Smith, I'm going to follow up on the funding theme. Bob raised the question of safety versus system expansion. I'm going to ask the safety versus maintenance question. Leah is very courageously leading a conversation here in Portland about new revenue for both safety and maintenance. But we're hearing pushback from at least one of our stakeholder committees that we need to spend more on maintenance and less on safety. How do we get a frame where we can make the right prioritizations around safety?
So I have been trying, I'm going to answer a different question. I have been trying very hard in our streets conversation to stop the dichotomy between safety and maintenance, and trying to have maintenance people who are pro-maintenance understand that there are safety components that can be installed along the way while we're doing maintenance, and that for this and to understand that there is a strong advocacy out there for safety, but we need, I think I had on my slide up there, surround the issue. I've said it several times, we need people who are safety advocates being as vocal in City Hall and with our leaders pushing for safety projects. But that being said, I really think I have been hopeful and impressed that Portland is moving away from the modal wars and looking at our system holistically. So I tell the business community and the safety groups, which are two different ones in the Our Streets conversation, that no matter which projects we're doing, whether it's a 2-inch grind and pave, when we go back in, before we restripe that street, we're going to look at it for safety improvements, and whether we need to take some lanes out, whether we're going to add parking, whether we need to change signal timing, add street signs, reflectivity. We're going to comprehensively look at that street that we're paving for further investments at the same time. So I didn't answer your question, but I said what I wanted to say.
That's okay. You've got the microphone, so. Okay, it's like.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Kuzer from TriMet, and I wanted to see if any of you could talk about experience working with the families of victims or survivors of crashes.
Well, I will just stay up front. It's very difficult. The individuals from our public safety environment that are the ones that reach out and make contact, and through our health systems that reach out and talk with the families that have suffered a tragedy, are heroes in their own right. They don't ever get a chance to be the one that's on the headline or on the news, but that one-to-one communication and helping the family through the pain and work their way through the unfortunate tragedy. For myself, I know it's something I could never do. And so my hat's off to those of you in the room that have been in those situations where you are the ones making first contact or continual contact with the family, be it professionally or because it's a coworker or a friend, thank you for doing that, because that is part of the healing as well, is to make sure that the families around that went through something tragic, that they have the love and support from all of us as well. And if you have the chance of even just shaking their hand or giving them a hug, do that, because it means a lot.
Going to go to this side, and remember, I'm going to try. We're running a little into our break, but so be quick.
Thanks. My name's Alan Delatorre from Portland State's Institute on Aging. We're in the midst of a rapid and unprecedented aging of our population. What are the strategies that are being taken at the local and state levels to address this issue?
Yeah, from an engineering standpoint, I feel like, and I'm sure Oregon's done many of the same things. Whenever we improve the infrastructure for everybody, and increasing size of signs and having brighter pavement markings. There's lots of engineering things that we've incorporated just into our regular standards that we're working on. I think the bigger issue and the tougher issue, and you're doing a much better job here than we are in Minnesota, is providing that alternative transportation for our aging population so that they're not driving, and having those available to people is so important to keep the older drivers that shouldn't be driving off the road.
Yeah, and so here in Portland, it's something that we need to focus some more energy on, but definitely if you look at trends nationwide, not only are older people wanting to age in place, but there's also the urban revival. They're wanting to move into cities because it's easier to get around, safer to get around. So our focus right now is primarily on getting safe access to transit. So they have an alternative option besides getting in their car, and a safe way to access reliable transportation.
Okay, and I think the last question will be right there.
Yes, I am Robert Scholl with ERMSI. I had enjoyed hearing a lot of it, especially looking at the elapsed number of days without a crash and so forth. My question is more to everybody here. Why are we still measuring crash rates with the vehicle miles of travel when we should be looking at the people? And so we as engineers will associate that more with the human lives.
In some ways, that is being done. The difficult case in that equation is the denominator, trying to figure out what are you measuring against that would be equal and fair. And for a long time, vehicle miles traveled has been one of those metrics that's been gathered here in Portland, as well as other places in the country, starting to look at bicyclist travel, and also in origin destination studies, looking at the number of people within the vehicle, the ability to track that as well. A difficult one is the number of people that walk, and there's some innovative research that's going on in that area as well. That at some point in time, when you're trying to compare jurisdictions or within a jurisdiction, one location to another, you get to the spot of what is the bottom line item you have in common between the two, that you can figure out some sort of rate, some sort of comparator, so that when you make that choice, you have something to rely on to say that you've made the best choice you can. It's difficult to gather that data. In some cases, it's pretty expensive to gather some of that information. But I know in some of the papers and some of the research through OTREC that there's an effort to try and normalize some of that information and get more information on alternate modes besides the motor vehicle.
All right. So thank you very much to our panelists and our audience for some thought-provoking questions.